I knew the question was coming the moment Victoria Hayes stepped into my cubicle at 5:27 p.m. Her heels clicked against the floor like a countdown, and when she stopped in front of my desk, I could feel my heart beating in my throat. "Why won't you date me?" she asked, her arms crossed, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I froze with my hand on my briefcase. For 4 years, I'd worked at Horizon Capital without anyone asking me personal questions. For 4 years, I'd built walls so high that nobody could see over them. But Victoria Hayes wasn't like everybody else. She was 32, brilliant, and she'd become our CEO 6 months ago after turning around 3 failing companies before ours. People whispered that she was ruthless, that she never took no for an answer, that she could read people like books. And now she was reading me. "I don't understand what you're asking," I said, even though I understood perfectly. She took a step closer. "I've asked you to coffee 3 times. You said no every time. I invited you to dinner last month. You said you were busy. I suggested we grab drinks after the quarterly meeting. You left before I finished the sentence." Her eyes searched my face like she was looking for clues. Most people would be flattered. Most people would at least give me a real reason why they're not interested. But you just smile and walk away like I'm not even there. My mouth felt dry. I wanted to tell her the truth, but the truth was too big, too heavy, too complicated to fit into a simple answer. "It's not personal," I managed to say. "I just don't date people from work. It's a rule I have." Victoria laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "A rule? You have a rule?" She shook her head. "Do you know what I've noticed about you? You leave every day at exactly 5:30. Not 5:25, not 5:35. Exactly 5:30, like someone set an alarm. You never stay for team dinners. You never join us for birthday celebrations. You turned down 3 promotions in 4 years, promotions that would have doubled your salary. Who does that?" I felt trapped. The walls of my cubicle suddenly felt too small, like they were closing in around me. "I like my life the way it is," I said quietly. "Some people don't need more money or a bigger title to be happy." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something shift in her expression. It wasn't anger anymore. It was curiosity mixed with something that looked almost like concern. "Conference room. Now," she said. "We're going to have this conversation whether you like it or not." I followed her down the hallway, past coworkers who glanced up from their desks with interested faces. Everyone knew Victoria had been pursuing me. Everyone had been waiting to see what would happen. The conference room was empty and quiet. She closed the door behind us and turned to face me. "I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," she said, her voice softer now. "But something doesn't add up. Your performance reviews are perfect. Your clients love you. You're the best analyst we have. But you act like this job is just something you do while you're waiting for your real life to start. So I'm asking you again, what's going on?" I sat down in one of the chairs and rubbed my face with both hands. I'd practiced this conversation in my head 100 times, always hoping I'd never have to have it. "There's someone," I said finally. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. "There's someone important to me, and that's why I can't stay late. That's why I leave at 5:30. That's why I can't date you or anyone else." Victoria sat down across from me. For the first time since she'd arrived at Horizon, she looked genuinely surprised. "You're in a relationship," she said slowly. "Why didn't you just say that from the beginning?" "It's complicated," I said. "More complicated than you can imagine." She leaned forward, her elbows on the table. "Try me. I'm pretty good with complicated." But I shook my head. Some things couldn't be explained in a conference room after work hours. Some things required context and time and trust one wasn't ready to give. "I need to go," I said, standing up. "I'm going to be late." Victoria stood too, blocking my path to the door. "Late for what? A date? Dinner? What's so important that you can't spare 10 more minutes?" "Everything," I said, and I meant it with every cell in my body. "What I'm late for is everything that matters." I moved past her and walked out of the conference room. My coworkers had all gone home by now. The office was quiet except for the hum of computers and air conditioning. I grabbed my briefcase from my cubicle and headed for the elevator. When the doors opened, Victoria was there, having taken the stairs. "I'm going to figure this out," she said as I stepped inside. "Whatever you're hiding, I'm going to figure it out." The elevator doors closed between us, and I leaned against the wall, breathing hard. She would figure it out eventually. People like Victoria Hayes always did. I just hoped I'd have more time before that happened. Traffic was light, which meant I made it to Mercy General Hospital in 20 minutes instead of the usual 23. I parked in my spot, the same one I'd been using for 4 years, and walked through the front entrance. The security guard, Marcus, nodded at me without asking for identification. The receptionist, Linda, smiled and said, "She had a good day today." I didn't ask how she knew. After 4 years of coming here every single evening, the staff knew more about my schedule than I did. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and walked down the hallway with the pale green walls and the fluorescent lights that buzzed quietly overhead. Room 418 was at the end, where the afternoon sun came through the windows and made everything look softer, warmer, less like a hospital and more like somewhere people actually lived. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Emma was there, lying in the bed where she'd been lying for 4 years. Her chest rose and fell with the steady rhythm of the ventilator. Her auburn hair was spread across the pillow, longer now than she'd ever worn it when she was awake. I'd learned how to brush it the way she liked, learned how to braid it on the days when the nurses said it might be more comfortable. This was my life now. This room, this woman, this promise I'd made the day we got married. "Hey, beautiful," I said softly, pulling the chair close to her bed. "Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. Had a situation at work." I reached for her hand, and her skin was warm under my fingers. The doctors said she couldn't feel anything, couldn't hear anything, couldn't process anything happening around her. But I didn't care what the doctors said. I talked to her anyway. "My boss cornered me today," I continued, settling into the chair. "Victoria. I've told you about her before. She's the new CEO, the one who keeps trying to ask me out. Today she wanted to know why I keep saying no. She wanted to know what I'm hiding." I laughed, but it sounded sad even to my own ears. "I didn't tell her about you. I couldn't figure out how to explain that my wife has been asleep for 4 years, and I visit her every single day because that's what you do when you love someone. That's what you do when you made a promise." I reached into my bag and pulled out the book we'd been reading together. It was a thriller, something Emma had bought at the airport bookstore 4 years and 2 months ago. She'd been so excited about it, talking about how she couldn't wait to see how it ended, how she was going to recommend it to her book club. We were on chapter 34 now. We'd been on chapter 34 for a week because I read slowly, wanting to make sure she didn't miss anything. "Chapter 34, I said, opening to the page I'd marked with a purple bookmark. Purple was her favorite color. I started reading, my voice steady and calm, telling her about characters solving mysteries and running from danger and falling in love despite impossible odds. I wondered sometimes if she could hear me. The medical staff said probably not. The brain scans showed minimal activity. The neurologist had explained that Emma was in what they called a persistent vegetative state, that her chances of waking up decreased with every month that passed. After 4 years, most families would have given up. Most families would have moved their loved one to a long-term care facility and visited once a month, maybe less. But I wasn't most families. I was her husband, and I'd made a promise. Back at Horizon Capital, Victoria was sitting in her office staring at her computer screen. She tried to work on the quarterly reports, tried to focus on the budget projections, tried to do anything that would get her mind off our conversation. But she couldn't stop thinking about what I'd said. Everything. What I'm late for is everything that matters. What did that mean? Where did I go every night that was more important than career advancement, than money, than her? Victoria had built her entire life around success. She'd graduated top of her class, earned her MBA before she turned 25, and become a CEO before 32. She'd sacrificed relationships, friendships, free time, everything most people valued. And she'd always believed it was worth it. But watching me walk away, seeing the look on my face when I talked about being late, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt uncertain. The next morning, Victoria did something she knew was wrong. She went to HR and asked them to pull my emergency contact information. Just updating our records, she told the HR assistant, Susan, keeping her voice casual even though her hands were shaking slightly. Making sure everyone's information is current. Susan didn't question it. Why would she? Victoria was the CEO. She could ask for anything she wanted. When Susan handed over the file, Victoria took it back to her office and closed the door. She opened it slowly, almost afraid of what she might find. Under emergency contacts, there was only one entry. Not a parent, not a sibling, not a friend. Just one name and one number. Mercy General Hospital, Neurological Care Unit, Room 418. Victoria stared at that single line for a long time. Her coffee got cold on her desk. Her phone rang twice and she ignored it. She just sat there, looking at those words, trying to understand what they meant. Finally, she closed the file and opened her laptop. She typed Mercy General Neurological Care Unit into the search bar and waited for the page to load. The hospital's website appeared, showing pictures of quiet hallways and comfortable rooms. But it was the words underneath that made her chest feel tight. Specialized care for patients with traumatic brain injuries, comas, and long-term unconscious states. When recovery takes time, we're here every step of the way. Victoria read every single page on that website. She learned about their programs, their success rates, their philosophy of never giving up on patients even when hope seemed impossible. She read stories from families who visited daily, who still believed their loved ones could hear them, who refused to let go. And slowly, carefully, the pieces started falling into place. I had someone at that hospital, someone in the neurological care unit, someone I visited every single evening without fail, someone who made me leave work at exactly 5:30, someone who made me turn down promotions and dates and everything else that might interfere with my schedule. Victoria closed her laptop and put her head in her hands. She'd spent 6 months trying to get my attention, 6 months wondering why I kept refusing her, 6 months thinking maybe there was something wrong with her. But there was nothing wrong with her. I was just already taken by someone who needed me more than anyone else ever could. Victoria couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about me sitting in a hospital room somewhere, visiting someone who probably couldn't even know I was there. She thought about the 4 years I'd spent making that drive, the 4 years I'd given up promotions and opportunities and any kind of social life. Most people would have moved on by now. Most people would have found a way to let go, to build a new life, to stop carrying the weight of someone else's tragedy. But I hadn't moved on. I showed up every single day like it was the most important appointment of my life. Because to me it was. Friday afternoon, the company held its monthly team-building event at a bar downtown. Victoria went because she had to. As CEO, people expected to see her there, smiling and mingling and pretending she enjoyed small talk about sports and weather and office gossip. She stood near the bar with a glass of wine she wasn't actually drinking, listening to conversations happening around her. That's when she heard my name. $5 says he's got a secret family. Someone from accounting said, loud enough that half the room could hear. No way someone stays that private for 4 years without hiding something big. Another voice joined in. Maybe he's just boring. Some people don't have lives outside work, you know? They go home and watch TV and that's it. But he doesn't even watch TV, a third person added. Remember when everyone was talking about that show last year? He had no idea what we were talking about. It's like he lives in a cave or something. They all laughed. Victoria set down her wine glass and walked out of the bar. She couldn't listen to them talk about me like that. Couldn't stand there knowing the truth while they made jokes about someone they didn't understand at all. She drove home through streets blurred by streetlights and her own confused thoughts. In her apartment, she poured another glass of wine and stood at the window looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, I was at Mercy General Hospital, sitting beside someone's bed, keeping a promise that most people wouldn't have kept for 4 weeks, let alone 4 years. Victoria realized something that made her feel hollow inside. She was 32 years old. She'd dated plenty of men, had relationships that lasted months or even years. But she'd never loved anyone the way I loved whoever was in that hospital bed. Every time a relationship had interfered with her work, she'd ended it. Every time someone had asked for more of her time, she'd said no. She'd told herself that success came first, that love could wait, that she'd have time for relationships after she'd built her career. But standing there in her empty apartment, Victoria understood that she'd been lying to herself. She'd never put another person first. She'd never made a promise she kept when it became difficult. She'd never chosen someone else over her own comfort, her own schedule, her own ambition. By Monday morning, Victoria had made a decision. She was going to Mercy General Hospital. She told herself it was for legitimate reasons. Horizon Capital donated to healthcare charities every year, and as CEO, she was responsible for deciding which organizations received grants. It made perfect sense for her to tour facilities, ask questions, evaluate their programs. Nobody would think twice about it. She called the hospital Monday afternoon and asked to speak with the director. "This is Victoria Hayes from Horizon Capital," she said, keeping her voice professional. "We're reviewing healthcare organizations for our annual charitable donations. Would it be possible to schedule a tour of your facility?" The director, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chun, sounded pleased. "We'd be honored to show you our facility, Ms. Hayes. Would Wednesday morning work for you?" "Wednesday would be perfect," Victoria said. "Let's say 10 o'clock. She hung up the phone and sat back in her chair, her heart beating fast. Wednesday arrived cold and gray. Victoria dressed carefully that morning, choosing a professional suit that said CEO on business rather than woman on a personal mission. She told her assistant she'd be out until noon and drove across town to Mercy General Hospital. The building looked different than she'd imagined. It wasn't sterile and scary like hospitals in movies. Instead, it felt warm, almost peaceful. The front entrance had large windows that let in natural light, and there were plants everywhere, green and alive and growing. Dr. Chun met her in the lobby. She was maybe 50 years old with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a simple bun. "Ms. Hayes, welcome," she said, shaking Victoria's hand. "Thank you so much for considering us for your foundation's support." They started the tour in the physical therapy wing, where staff helped patients maintain muscle strength and flexibility. Dr. Chun explained their methods, their success rates, their commitment to treating every patient with dignity regardless of their prognosis. Victoria nodded and asked questions, playing her role perfectly. But her mind was somewhere else. She knew they were getting closer to the patient rooms with every step. They walked through the family support center where loved ones could find counseling and resources. They saw the memorial garden where people could sit and think and breathe. "Our residents are here because someone refused to give up on them," Dr. Chen explained. "Every person in this building has at least one person who believes they're worth fighting for. That's what makes our work meaningful." Finally, they turned down a long hallway. A sign on the wall said East Wing. Afternoon light streamed through windows at the far end, making everything glow soft and golden. And then Victoria saw room 418. Through the window, I sat beside a hospital bed. A woman lay there, completely still except for the rise and fall of her chest. She had auburn hair spread across the pillow and peaceful features that might have been beautiful once, that were still beautiful now in a different, quieter way. I held a book in one hand and her hand in my other, and my lips moved as I read aloud to someone who couldn't hear me. Victoria stopped walking. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. "That's one of our longest residents," Dr. Chan said softly, following Victoria's gaze. "Emma Patterson. Traumatic brain injury from a car accident 4 years ago. Texting driver ran her off the road. She was only 27 when it happened. 27. So young. Too young." Victoria's hands clenched at her sides. "Her husband comes every day," Dr. Chun continued. "Every single day without fail. Rain, snow, holidays, doesn't matter. He's never missed once. Not in 4 years. Husband." The word hit Victoria like cold water. Not boyfriend, not partner. Husband. "I was married. Some families struggle to visit once a month," Dr. Chun said, her voice carrying a mix of sadness and admiration. "The emotional burden is enormous. But that man right there, he reads to her for an hour every evening, talks to her about his day, brushes her hair. He brings her fresh flowers every week. Always the same kind. Purple tulips. He says they were her favorite. Through the window, Victoria watched me turn a page in the book. My expression was soft, open, completely different from the careful blank face I wore at the office. This was who I really was when nobody from work was watching. This was the man beneath all the walls I'd built. Does she respond at all? Victoria heard herself ask. Dr. Chun shook her head slowly. Not yet. Her doctors don't expect she ever will. The damage was too severe. But her husband refuses to accept that. He believes she can hear him, that somewhere inside she's still there. Victoria felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. How does he do it? She whispered. How does he keep coming back when there's no hope? Dr. Chun smiled sadly. Who says there's no hope? Maybe hope looks different than we think it should. Maybe hope is just showing up day after day, whether anything changes or not. Maybe that's the truest kind of hope there is. They finished the tour, but Victoria barely heard anything else Dr. Chun said. Her mind stayed in room 418 with me and Emma, replaying the image of my hand wrapped around my wife's fingers. My voice reading words she couldn't hear. My face showing a tenderness I never revealed at Horizon Capital. When the tour ended, Victoria thanked Dr. Chun and promised to consider Mercy General for the Foundation's grant program. Then she walked out to her car, got inside, and sat very still. For a long moment, she did nothing. Just sat there with her hands on the steering wheel, staring at the hospital entrance. Then she started crying. Big, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep in her chest. She cried for Emma, lying in that bed for 4 years. She cried for me, visiting every single day without fail. She cried for the love that kept showing up even when it got nothing back. But mostly she cried for herself. That evening, Victoria sat in her office long after everyone else had gone home. She pulled out her phone and called Mercy General Hospital. Dr. Chun, this is Victoria Hayes. I've made a decision about the donation. They talked for 15 minutes. When Victoria hung up, she'd arranged for Horizon Capital's foundation to make an anonymous donation to Mercy General's long-term care fund. Enough money to cover one patient's expenses for the next 10 years. One specific patient, Emma Patterson, room 418. Can you ensure this remains completely anonymous? Victoria asked. Her husband shouldn't know where the money came from. Of course, Dr. Chun assured her. We respect donor privacy absolutely. Victoria ended the call and sat back in her chair. It wasn't much. It wouldn't wake Emma up or bring her back or make anything easier for me emotionally. But it would mean I wouldn't have to worry about medical bills on top of everything else. It would mean one less weight on shoulders that were already carrying too much. 3 weeks passed. Victoria stopped asking me about my personal life. She stopped inviting me to coffee or dinner or drinks. But she watched me more carefully now, seeing things she'd missed before. The way my shoulders relaxed slightly at 5:25 when I knew I'd make it to the hospital on time. The way I smiled at my computer screen sometimes, like I was remembering something happy. The way I carried myself with quiet dignity that had nothing to do with work success and everything to do with keeping promises. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang during a budget meeting. I looked at the screen and my face went completely white. I have to take this, I said, standing up so fast my chair rolled backward. I answered the phone in the hallway. Hello. Victoria watched through the conference room window as my expression changed from fear to shock to something that looked like joy mixed with terror. I ended the call and just stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. Then I grabbed my briefcase and started running toward the elevator. Victoria followed me out of the conference room. Are you okay? She called after me. I stopped and turned back. Our eyes met, and something in my expression must have told her everything because her face changed completely. Go, she said softly. Whatever it is, just go. I drove to Mercy General faster than I should have, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The nurse had said Emma showed purposeful movement, that she'd squeeze someone's hand when asked to. After 4 years of nothing, any movement was everything. When I reached room 418, the neurologist was waiting outside. We want to try something, she said. We want you to talk to her, Read to her like you usually do. Let's see if she responds again. I sat beside Emma's bed and picked up our book with trembling hands. Hey, beautiful, I whispered. I'm here. I'm always here. I started reading, my voice shaking. We were near the end of the book now. Just a few chapters left after 4 years of reading together. I read for 5 minutes, then 10. Nothing happened. My heart sank. Then, so faint I almost missed it, Emma's fingers twitched against mine. Not random. Purposeful. I stopped reading. Emma? Can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. Another squeeze. Stronger this time. Tears poured down my face. That's it. That's my girl. I'm here. I've been here the whole time. The weeks that followed were full of small miracles. Emma's eyes opened for a few seconds. Her fingers moved more deliberately. She began making sounds that weren't quite words but weren't random either. The doctors said her recovery would be unpredictable, that brain injuries like hers didn't follow neat patterns. She might regain everything or she might regain very little. There was no way to know except to wait and work and hope. I took 2 weeks off work, and Victoria approved it immediately without questions. When I came back, everything felt different. I still left at 5:30, but now I left with real hope instead of just stubborn faith. One afternoon, while reviewing reports together, Victoria said quietly, "Something's changed." I looked up at her. We'd been dancing around so much for months now, all these unspoken things hanging between us. Emma responded, I said. For the first time in 4 years. She squeezed my hand. Then her eyes opened. The doctors don't know how much she'll recover, but it's something. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. That's incredible. It is, I agreed. After 4 years of nothing, it's everything. I'm so happy for you, Victoria said, and I could see she meant it, but I could also see something else in her eyes, something that looked like sadness mixed with the happiness. Months passed. Emma's recovery was slow but steady. She started staying awake for longer periods. She began to recognize me, though her memories were scrambled and confused. The doctors said her brain was rewiring itself, creating new pathways around the damaged areas. It would take years, maybe, but she was coming back. One evening, 6 months after that first squeeze, Emma spoke in full sentences for the first time. Her words were slow and careful, but they were there. There's someone else, she said, her eyes on my face. I can tell. Someone who helped you through this. I started to deny it, but Emma squeezed my hand. Don't lie to me. I can see it in your eyes. You look different, softer somehow. Someone taught you how to let people in again. I thought about Victoria, about the way she'd protected my time, understood my choices, donated money she thought I'd never know about. Yes, I admitted. There was someone. My boss, actually. She saw what I was doing and she understood it. Emma smiled, her face still pale but alive in a way it hadn't been in 4 years. I want to meet her. When I'm better, when I can hold a real conversation, I want to thank her. Emma? I'm not jealous, she said softly. You kept your promise to me. You never gave up. But I was gone for 4 years and you needed someone. I'm grateful she was there. A year after that first squeeze, Emma came home. She still needed therapy and exercises. She still tired easily and struggled with certain memories. But she was home. She was awake. She was back. And one evening, she asked me again about Victoria. Invite her to dinner. I want to meet the woman who saw you when everyone else just looked past you. I didn't want to. Felt complicated and messy. But Emma insisted, and I'd never been good at refusing her anything. So I asked Victoria to dinner at our house. She tried to decline, but I told her it was Emma's request. She couldn't say no to that. The dinner was awkward at first. 3 people dancing around everything that had happened, everything that had almost happened, everything that couldn't happen now. But Emma had a way of cutting through awkwardness. Thank you, she said to Victoria over dessert, for seeing him, for protecting his time, for understanding what most people couldn't. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. He made it easy. The way he loved you, the way he kept his promise. It changed how I see everything. Emma reached across the table and took Victoria's hand. Love isn't something that runs out when you give it to more than one person. You helped my husband survive the hardest years of his life. That means you're family now. That dinner became monthly dinners, then weekly coffee meetings. Victoria and Emma became genuine friends. And slowly, carefully, with Emma's blessing and encouragement, something deeper began to grow between Victoria and me. It took years. Years of Emma recovering fully, of rebuilding our marriage, of making sure our foundation was solid. But eventually, Emma sat us both down and said the words that made everything possible. You two love each other. I see it and I'm not threatened by it because I know you both love me too. Love doesn't divide. It grows. We became 3 instead of 2. Victoria moved in 2 years after Emma came home. And somehow it worked. We all had roles, all had space, all had love. Because some promises don't end when they become difficult. And real love recognizes that caring for one person doesn't reduce your ability to care for another. It just proves you know what love actually means.